Hello and welcome to another episode of the Grimm's Fairy Tales, where we take a deep dive into the fairy tales of your childhood. And today we will be discussing a tale called Godfather Death. Perfect for Halloween. Godfather Death was first published in the first edition of the Children's and Household Tales by the Brothers Grimm in the year 1812. One thing different about this tale is that the first edition contained a completely different ending to what was in the subsequent editions, which were made a little bit more children-friendly. Now, there wasn't much I could find about the history of this tale and where it originated from, but I found that some scholars believe that this tale originated in an Icelandic manuscript dated from the year 1339. Our tale opens with a poor man who had 12 children and had to work day and night just to support them. But then he had another one. There's no mention of a mother figure and no mention of where this other one sprang from, but he ended up having 13 children. Proper lucky number right there. The man had reached his limit. He was so desperate for food, money, everything that you can imagine that went with running a household on your own with 13 kids to feed. The man decided that he would go out into the main road and ask the very first person he met to stand as godfather to his new child. What could go wrong? Now, the role of a godparent is to take an interest in the child that they're standing for, to help with the child's upbringing, to offer mentorship, or claim legal guardianship if something happens to the parents. So yeah, asking the first stranger that you meet on the road to stand as godfather and protector for your child is just really great parenting. Although not sure how that would really help the guy out if he's stuck with money and food, because it's not like he's giving his 13th child away to somebody to adopt and bring up as their own. He's still got 13 children to feed and no money and still has to work all day and all night to take care of them. So the first person the man meets out on this main road is God. And of course, being God, he knows exactly what the man is going to ask him, and he felt sorry for him for having all these children and no way to feed him. And he said he would be sure to take care of the child and make certain that the child would find happiness in their life. Now, when the man asked, who are you? God answered, I'm God, of course. And the man refused and said, absolutely no way, I don't want you as godfather, because you give to the rich and you leave the poor hungry. And turned from him and carried on down the road. Because of course you would spurn such a celestial being. And then the devil came sauntering down the road and asked him that if he was the godfather to the child, then the child would be given a heap of gold and all the pleasures in the world would be his. When the man asked who the gentleman was, and he replied, I'm the devil, the man said no, and the devil deceives people and leads them astray. Which is so much for asking the first person on the road. He can't be that picky, really. You've got 13 kids, you can't be that picky. Now the man carried on his way, and the figure of death came up to him and said, let me be godfather, for I treat everyone as equals, no matter their rank, no matter their wealth, and no matter their power. I mean, look at him. He looks a right trustworthy sort, doesn't he? Now the man agreed to this proposal, and Death said that as a reward, he would make the child rich and famous, and he will never lack for anything. And as such, Death went on his way, and the two parted. So I'm not really sure what he wanted in the short term to help feed all these kids, because nothing so far has stated anything that anybody's helped him at all. He's still got all 13 mouths to feed, and still doesn't have any money. The boy was nearly an adult when Death finally showed up again and asked him to accompany him for a walk in the woods and showed to him a special herb which was growing there. And he said It's time for me to give you your christening present. It's been a long time coming. I'm going to see to it that you become a famous physician. If you're called to the bedside of someone who is ill, I'm going to be right there. If I'm standing by the patient's head, you can speak right up and declare that you are able to cure him. And if you give him some of this herb, he will recover. But if I'm standing by the feet of the person who is ill, then the patient belongs to me, and you will have to declare that all efforts are in vain and that there is no doctor in the world who can save him. Just be careful that you never use this herb against my will, or you might find yourself in deep trouble. Seems like a good bargain to me. Now, before long, the young man became, as Death had predicted, a world-famous physician. People would travel far and wide just to seek his counsel, and he had never been wrong. They said that all he had to do was look at a patient to see whether they would live or whether they would die, and people gave him so much money that he became really, really wealthy very, very fast. One day the physician was summoned to the bedside of the king and was asked to determine if the king had any chance of recovering from the grave illness that he found himself in. When he arrived, he saw Death standing by the king's feet and knew that he could not be saved. But, the physician thought, if he could cheat Death this once, that of course Death would be annoyed, but he was his only godson, and would of course be forgiven. He took that chance. He turned the patient around so that Death was now standing at his head, and administered the herb. The king lived, but Death was pissed. Death promptly strode over to him, and he was pissed. But he said, "As you are my godson, I'll let you off this once. This was your only strike. You do this again, and I'll take you myself." Fair enough. Now, in the original, which is different to this one, Death said that if he dared to trick him again and cheat him again, he would twist his head off and keep it as a trophy. Now, not very long later, the king's daughter fell gravely ill as well, and her being his only child and heir, the king sent out a proclamation that whoever could cure her and bring her back would marry her and inherit the entire kingdom on his death. Of course, the physician went straight to her bedside because, who's going to pass up a crown when you've got Death on your side? And immediately saw, unfortunately, that Death was standing at her feet, meaning she was his. The physician should have remembered his godfather's warning, though, but he was so dazzled by the princess's beauty and the prospect of marrying her and inheriting a kingdom that he threw caution to the winds and defied his godfather one more time. He didn't notice that Death was giving him angry looks, a death stare, if you will. I'm so sorry. And threatening him with his fist. The physician turned the princess around, just like he had done with the king, so that her head was where Death was standing, and that she promptly gained colour back in her cheeks, and the physician had saved her life, and helped her cheat Death one more time. When Death realised he had been cheated a second time, even after giving his godson a stark warning that he shouldn't do it, he strode up to the physician, grabbed his arm in his icy grip, and said, "That's it. Now it's your turn to die." And with that, he took him. Death took him to an underground cavern where there were thousands and thousands of lights burning in endless rows. Some were large, some were medium, and some were quite small. Here you can see the candles that are the lights of human lives. The large ones belong to children, the medium ones to couples in their prime, and the little ones to the aged. But sometimes even children and young people only have small candles. Of course, the physician wanted to see his candle, And who could resist the temptation of seeing how long you had left in your life, especially if you were on the verge of inheriting a kingdom and marrying a princess? The physician asked to see his candle, and of course, his doting godfather agreed. Death pointed to the tiniest wick in the cavern that was about to go out. The physician said, "Please, can you light another one? I'm your only godson, and can't you help me? I need to have some pleasure in this life. I'm about to marry a princess and inherit a kingdom. I can't just die when I'm on the cusp of all of this power, considering where I came from." And Death said that he can't. He does not play favourites, not even with someone who is his godson. He would have to put one out before lighting another one. The physician asked if he could put another candle on top of the one that was burning so that it would burn through and his life would carry on for many, many years yet. And Death pretended to agree to this request and reached for the biggest, newest candle that was in the cavern. However, when he was reaching for this candle, Death deliberately had an accident and knocked over the tiny wick, which was the physician's candle, and snuffed it out because he wanted his revenge, because you don't cheat him twice. The tiny wick collapsed, and the physician collapsed along with it, and finally he was in the hands of Death himself. Now, in the original version of this tale, the tale ends when Death takes him to the cavern and shows the physician his candle, saying that he better watch out because Death had control over his life. And that is the end of our tale today. Let me know in the comments down below which godfather you would have chosen. Would you choose God? Would you choose Satan? Or would you choose Death as the man did in this story? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. And if you like the artwork featured in this week's episode, please check the links in the description down below where you will find a link to the artist's socials. So until next time, keep reading.